I believe Australia is on the cusp of a national real estate boom, and I do emphasise national. We haven't had a genuine national real estate boom in Australia since the one from 2001 to 2004, when all the major markets experienced strong price rises. The one that drove Sydney and Melbourne prices higher from 2013 to 2017 was not a nationwide phenomenon, as few other locations around the nation shared that price uplift. But right now, forces are building which will generate growth in most major cities and towns across the nation. They'll be boosted by new events which will energise economies, particularly infrastructure spending and increased activity in the resources sector. This week's federal budget makes it all the more certain that real estate will rise strongly. We currently have a remarkably strong situation with markets across Australia, everywhere in fact, except the two biggest cities, which is so often the exception rather than the rule. The new price data from CoreLogic suggests that all capital cities except Sydney and Melbourne had price growth in September, while most regional markets also recorded growth. And the new price data from SQM Research shows growth in 7 of the 8 capital cities, including in Sydney. And whichever set of figures you believe, the September figures continue the stubborn performance of markets since February, when the pandemic first started to impact Australia. Many of our capital cities have recorded some level of house price growth in most months since February. Canberra has had growth in each of the past 7 months, and Adelaide has had uplift in 6 of the 7 months. Regional markets around Australia are pumping strongly, with vacancies ultra low, rents rising, and buyers outnumbering sellers. People at the coalface of these markets, including buyers agents, valuers and selling agents, have been reporting very competitive markets for several months, and the data supports those views. So I would argue that significant sections of the nation already have notable upcycles underway, particularly those where the virus has got under control early, local economies are strong, consumer confidence is good, vacancies are low, first-home buyers are active, and the exodus to affordable lifestyle is having an impact. Some locations have most or all of those factors in place. They include Perth, Adelaide, Hobart, Canberra, regional centres like Ballarat, Bendigo, Albury, Wodonga, Orange, the Sunshine Coast, Mackay, Rockhampton, Townsville. Of the 15 major market jurisdictions in Australia, which is 8 capital cities and 7 state and territory regional markets, 11 of them have prices higher than at the start of 2020. 12 of the 15 jurisdictions have house prices higher than a year ago, and for apartments, 11 of the 15 locations across the country have prices higher than a year ago. This means there is a groundswell of positive factors, a rising tide of markets, particularly outside the 2 biggest cities, which is where 2/3 of Australians live. And against that background, there are positive forces building which will turbocharge the situation and create a national property boom. We have seen that local economies and property markets have charged out of the lockdown phases with considerable exuberance. And we can also get a message from New Zealand, where that economy has continued to emit positive signals and property prices have been rising strongly right across the country. The more our local economies return to normal, with Melbourne recovering and state border restrictions easing, the more we will see improved confidence and rising market activity. But the big looming factor is the upcoming infrastructure spend, and partly as a byproduct of that, considerable uplift in the resources sector. It's clear that federal and state governments intend to generate an infrastructure-led economic recovery and are willing to go deep into budget deficit to achieve it. And few things supercharge economies and real estate markets like big infrastructure projects, be they motorways, rail links, hospitals or energy facilities. Infrastructure developments create economic activity and jobs, and they energise property markets. And they also improve the amenity of locations that are directly impacted by the new projects. A byproduct of that infrastructure boom will be a new resources boom, with that sector already busy servicing overseas demand. Now, another big factor that will drive prices higher is the extraordinary shortage of real estate in Australia. Vacancy rates of 1% and lower are the norm now, and it's putting upward pressure on rents. Developers have been building less in recent years. Investors have been sitting on the sidelines for the last 18 months or so the rental stock the market needs has not been created at the required levels. Vendors have been reticent, which means buyers outnumber sellers in many locations. Recently, we've seen economists from the major banks and other institutions recanting their March-April forecast that real estate prices would drop 10, 20, 30%, and are now suggesting more moderate outcomes, with Westpac now predicting boom-level price growth starting next year. Now, while they and others are becoming increasingly bullish in their predictions, they're still getting it wrong. Prices may be nudging downwards, generally speaking, in Sydney and Melbourne, but they are rising in most other places already, and the big uplift that will come much sooner than the economists expect. We're starting to see media reacting to the change in sentiment as well, although they're, as usual, well behind the game. We recently saw in the Australian the headline top end of housing market will lead recovery, the Financial Review saying that housing bears face extinction as forecasts turn bullish, the ABC headlining house prices bounce in September, Property Observer saying houses emerge stronger over September, and the headline, are we nearing another property boom in smart property investor? And all that's significant because media is generally reluctant to present positive scenarios about the housing market. Also note that Simon Presley of Propertyology is also predicting a property boom. He writes in a report published last week, make no mistake, property markets in large parts of Australia will be booming by summer. He says several locations in different parts of the country already have produced double-digit capital growth in the first 9 months of this calendar year, and there are many others with fast-growing momentum. Presley says anecdotal evidence from research conducted by Propertyology suggests that property markets are already booming in locations such as Noosa, Canberra, Orange, Bendigo, Mildura, Mount Gambier, Coffs Harbour, Karratha. That's 10 towns in 7 states and territory. And he says the cast of thousands who, during the March-April national lockdown, were forecasting a real estate Armageddon have scored an epic fail. And I wholeheartedly agree. And like Simon Presley, I see a property boom in Australia's short-term future. And some places it's happening already. Bye for now.